The night was heavy with rain, the kind that hammered against windows and drowned out the sounds of the city. Streams of water rushed along the gutters, reflecting the dim glow of streetlights. Kelly tugged her coat tighter around herself as she stepped out of the restaurant, her shoes splashing in a puddle. She glanced at her phone, the Uber app glowing on the screen. "Driver will arrive in 5 minutes," it read. The night had been exhausting. Dinner with her coworkers had been tolerable at best, and now all Kelly wanted was to get home, crawl into bed, and leave the stress of the week behind. She tapped her foot impatiently, shivering as the rain seeped through her coat. The street was unusually quiet. No cars, no pedestrians, just the muffled sound of the downpour. A car pulled up to the curb. It was a sleek black sedan, its windows tinted so dark that she couldn't see inside. The license plate matched the one on her app. Kelly hesitated for a moment. Something about the car felt off. Maybe it was the way it had appeared so suddenly, without headlights, or the faint whine of its engine that didn't quite sound like a typical car. But then again, it was late, and the rain wasn't letting up. "Uber for Kelly?" came a voice as the passenger side window slid down. The driver was a man in his late 40s, with salt and pepper hair and a warm, reassuring smile. Kelly nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, that's me." She slid into the back seat, the door shutting with a soft click. The interior of the car was pristine, almost unnaturally so. The leather seats looked brand new, and there wasn't a single scuff or speck of dust. Even the faint smell of the car, a blend of leather and something floral, seemed oddly sterile. "Long night?" the driver asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. His tone was friendly, but there was something in his eyes, a sharpness that didn't match his casual demeanor. "Yeah," Kelly replied, trying to sound nonchalant. She looked out the window as the car began to move. The rain blurred the city lights, creating streaks of color against the darkness. "Just ready to get home?" The driver nodded, his hands steady on the wheel. "I hear that a lot. People just wanting to get home. Safe and sound." The way he emphasized the last words made Kelly's stomach twist. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, suddenly very aware of how quiet it was inside the car. The rain outside was muted, almost like the car was insulated from the world. Kelly glanced at her phone. The app showed the car's route, but something wasn't right. Instead of heading toward her apartment, the blue line on the map curved in the opposite direction. Her pulse quickened. I think you're going the wrong way," she said, her voice tighter than she intended. The driver didn't look back at her. "Just taking a shortcut. The main roads are flooded from the rain." Kelly stared at the map. The route he was taking didn't make any sense. It was leading them away from the city center and into a more isolated area. "I'd really prefer if you just stuck to the route," she said, her voice firmer now. The driver didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the road ahead, his expression unreadable. The unease in Kelly's chest grew into a knot of fear. She tapped the emergency button on the Uber app, but nothing happened. The screen froze and then the app crashed. Her breath hitched. She tried to call 911, but her phone had no signal. "Hey," she said, louder this time, her voice laced with panic. "Where are we going?" The driver's smile returned, but now it looked forced, like a mask. "Don't worry, Kelly," he said, his tone soothing in a way that made her skin crawl. "You'll be home soon." The car turned onto a narrow, unpaved road surrounded by dense woods. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the skeletal branches of trees. Kelly's heart was pounding now. She reached for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The locks were engaged. "Let me out," she demanded, her voice trembling. "Right now." The driver didn't answer. Instead, he reached for something on the dashboard. There was a faint click, and a low hum filled the car. Kelly's vision swam for a moment, a wave of dizziness washing over her. What are you doing?" she stammered, her head spinning. "It's just a precaution," the driver said, his voice calm. "Can't have you panicking. Now can we?" Kelly's adrenaline surged. She fought against the dizziness, her fingers fumbling to unbuckle her seatbelt. The hum grew louder, resonating in her skull. Her vision blurred, and for a moment, she thought she saw something move in the rearview mirror, something behind her, in the back seat. But when she turned, there was nothing there. "I don't know who you are, but I'm just the driver," he interrupted, his tone unnervingly cheerful. "And you're the passenger. Isn't that how it works?" The car came to a stop in the middle of the woods. The headlights illuminated a dilapidated building, its windows shattered and its walls covered in graffiti. The sight of it sent a jolt of terror through Kelly. She fumbled for her phone again, trying to send a message, an SOS, anything, but the screen remained blank. The driver turned off the engine and twisted around in his seat, his smile stretching wider than it should have been. For the first time, Kelly noticed how sharp his teeth looked, gleaming unnaturally in the dim light. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his voice shifting into something guttural and alien. Kelly's instincts took over. She lashed out, kicking at the door with all her strength. The lock finally gave, and the door swung open. She scrambled out into the rain, her feet slipping on the muddy ground. The driver stepped out after her, his movements unnaturally fluid, like a predator stalking its prey. She didn't look back. She ran, her lungs burning and her heart hammering in her chest. The woods closed in around her, the rain masking the sound of her footsteps. But she could hear him following, his footsteps light but deliberate, his laughter echoing through the trees. "You can't run forever, Kelly," he called, his voice unnervingly close. "I know these woods better than you." Kelly stumbled, her foot catching on a root. She fell hard, the impact jarring her entire body. As she scrambled to get up, she felt a hand grab her ankle, cold and impossibly strong. She screamed, kicking wildly, and managed to break free. But as she looked up, she saw his face, his real face. It wasn't human. His eyes were black voids, and his mouth twisted into something far too wide, filled with rows of jagged teeth. His skin shimmered like oil, shifting and rippling in the rain. She bolted, her fear driving her forward. In the distance, she saw the faint glow of headlights. Another car, parked on a distant road. She sprinted toward it, waving her arms frantically. "Help! Please, help me!" The car door opened, and a woman stepped out, her face a mixture of confusion and concern. Kelly collapsed into her arms, sobbing and gasping for breath. "He's coming," Kelly cried. "He's—" She turned back toward the woods, but the man, or whatever he was gone. The trees stood silent, their skeletal branches swaying in the wind. The woman helped Kelly into the car and called the police. When the officers arrived, Kelly recounted everything, but there was no trace of the driver, the car, or the strange building in the woods. The police chalked it up to a traumatic experience, but Kelly knew what she had seen. That night, as she lay in bed, her body still trembling with fear, her phone buzzed. She hesitated before picking it up. It was a notification from the Uber app. "Your driver has arrived." Kelly's blood ran cold. The app showed a black sedan parked outside her building.